The first year you make $100,000, you expect to feel different, not completely different, but enough. You expect the grocery store to feel cheaper. You expect bills to stop irritating you. You expect your bank account to finally look like the salary people hear when you tell them what you earn. Most of all, you expect one feeling you have been waiting for since your first job. I made it. Then your first six-figure paycheck arrives, and for a few seconds, you just stare at it. Because this is the number people use in conversations about success. The number younger, you thought separated ordinary people from people who had figured life out. $100,000 a year. Except the amount that actually lands in your account does not look anything like $100,000. Taxes came first. Retirement contributions took their piece. Insurance took another. Rent is already waiting. The car needs fuel. Your phone bill is due. And suddenly the number that looked enormous from the outside feels strangely normal. That is the first surprise of earning six figures. Your life does not transform when the number changes, but something else does. And over the next few years, that change becomes far more important than the salary itself. Before $100,000, a few years earlier, your life was simpler. Not easier, simpler. You knew what the problem was. You needed more money. If the car broke, money was the problem. If rent increased, money was the problem. If you wanted to travel, money was the problem. If your job made you miserable, money was still the problem, because quitting required savings you did not have. Almost every frustration seemed to point toward the same solution. Earn more, so you worked, you took the better role, stayed late, learned skills nobody asked you to learn, accepted responsibilities before the title arrived. Your salary moved from $50,000 to $65,000, then $78,000, then $92,000, and every increase helped, but each one also moved the finish line. At $50,000, you thought $75,000 would feel comfortable. At $75,000, you thought $100,000 would feel secure. And because six figures had such a clean psychological boundary, you treated it differently. 5 digits meant you were still climbing. 6 digits meant you had arrived. So when the email finally comes, new annual compensation, $100,000, you read it twice. This should be the moment, and it is, just not for the reason you expected. The first thing that changes, small problems shrink. A month later, your washing machine stops working. Years ago, this would have ruined your week. You would have searched repair videos, called 3 places, compared used machines online, maybe waited until payday. This time you look at the repair quote, $480. You still do not like it, but you pay, and 15 minutes later, you are thinking about something else. That is when you notice the first real difference. It is not that expensive things become cheap. It is that small problems stop occupying your entire mind. A flat tire becomes an inconvenience, not a crisis. A last-minute flight becomes painful, not impossible. A dental bill can still annoy you without forcing you to choose which other bill waits. This sounds small. It is not. For years, part of your attention was permanently rented by financial uncertainty. Now some of that attention comes back. But once small expenses stop scaring you, a dangerous thought appears. If spending $500 no longer hurts, maybe spending a little more everywhere will not hurt either. That is where six figures begins testing you. The lifestyle upgrade nobody announces. It does not happen all at once. You do not wake up one morning and decide to become expensive. The upgrades arrive disguised as reasonable decisions. Your apartment lease ends. You find another place. It is only $400 more, but it has better windows, a gym downstairs, a cleaner neighborhood. You can afford it. So you move. Your car is still reliable, but now you spend 40 minutes every morning inside something you no longer enjoy. The newer model has better seats, better safety features, better everything. The payment fits, so you upgrade. You start ordering food more often because your time feels valuable. You take the direct flight. You choose the hotel closer to everything. You stop buying the cheapest version of every object. Nothing feels reckless. That is exactly why this stage is dangerous. At lower incomes, bad financial decisions often look obviously bad. At $100,000, bad decisions can look completely reasonable. You're not buying a Lamborghini. You are simply adding $400 here, $300 there, $100 somewhere else. And 6 months later, your life costs $1,800 more every month than it used to. You are earning more. You are living better. But the distance between your income and your lifestyle has not grown nearly as much as you expected. The salary increased, so did the minimum price of being you. And this creates the second surprise. 6 figures can make you feel richer, while quietly keeping you just as dependent on the next paycheck. The people around you change too. Then something happens that has nothing to do with your budget. People begin making assumptions. You never announce your salary, but promotions become visible. Your apartment changes, your job title changes, maybe the car changes. Someone in your family asks how work is going. You say, good. They smile. You're doing pretty well now, huh? You shrug. But the sentence stays with you, because now you have entered a strange social category. You are not wealthy enough to feel rich, but you earn enough that other people may assume money is no longer a serious limitation. A friend chooses a more expensive restaurant. No problem for you. Someone wants to split a vacation house evenly, even though you are staying 2 nights. You make the most. A relative needs help with something. You want to help, and now saying no feels different. At $60,000, people understood when something was expensive. At $100,000, your financial boundaries can begin looking like selfishness. Nobody says this directly. They do not need to. You feel it. And that leads to a new type of pressure. Before, you worried about not having enough money. Now you sometimes worry about looking cheap despite earning enough. That pressure can cost more than the raise itself. Then your comparison group changes. There is another problem. $100,000 only feels large when you compare it to less. And human beings are very good at changing the comparison. You attend a work dinner. The person across from you earns $140,000. The manager earns $200. Someone left last year and joined another company for $250. You open social media. A 27-year-old says he makes $30,000 a month. Another person explains why earning $100,000 is basically middle class now. You know some of it is nonsense. It still gets inside your head. The salary you spent years chasing becomes normal within months. Not because the number changed, because your environment did. You did not become poorer. Your reference point became richer. And this is one of the strangest things money does. It improves your life, then quietly introduces you to people whose lives make your improvement feel inadequate. You thought $100,000 would end comparison. Instead, it qualifies you for a more expensive version of it. But there is a way 6 figures genuinely begins changing your position, and it has almost nothing to do with looking successful. Your emergency fund changes the way your boss sounds. One evening, your manager asks you to stay. There is a new deadline. The team is behind. The next few weekends may be difficult. A few years ago, your response would have been automatic. Of course, you needed the job. Not in an abstract sense. You needed this month's job. Rent depended on it. Food depended on it. Everything depended on the next deposit arriving exactly when expected. But now you have money saved. Not enough to retire. Not enough to disappear forever. But enough. 3 months of expenses. Then 4. Then 6. The manager keeps talking. And while he talks, you realize something he does not know. You could survive if this job disappeared. Suddenly his request sounds different, not harmless, not irrelevant, just different, because dependence changes the meaning of authority. When you cannot afford to leave, a request can feel like an order. When you have margin, you hear the same sentence as a negotiation. You may still work the weekend, but now you are choosing it. That is the moment $100,000 starts becoming more than a salary, not when you upgrade your car, when you build enough distance between yourself and desperation that another person loses some control over your decisions. And strangely, nobody can see this wealth. The boring money starts becoming powerful. Your investment account reaches 10,000, then 20, then 30. Nothing about this looks impressive. There is no engine sound, no upgraded apartment lobby, no waiter noticing your watch, just numbers on a screen. You automate another contribution, then another. And for the first time in your life, meaningful amounts of money begin moving into your future without requiring a monthly decision. This is where 6 figures can create a fork. One version of you uses the extra income to make the present increasingly expensive. The other uses part of it to make the future increasingly optional. From the outside, those 2 people can look identical. Same salary, similar apartment, same black shirt, maybe even the same car. But 10 years later, their lives can be completely different. One person needs every paycheck to maintain what he built. The other has slowly built something that can eventually replace the paycheck. The difference did not begin at $1 million. It began with what happened to the first extra $1,000 after $100,000. Your relationship with time changes. Then another shift appears. You start noticing how much of your life's small savings consume. You could spend 3 hours fixing something yourself, or pay someone $150. Years ago, the answer was obvious. You did it yourself. Now the answer depends. You could take a flight with 2 connections and save $200, or take the direct one and get 5 hours of your life back. You begin calculating purchases differently. Not only, how much does this cost? But, how much time does this save? At lower incomes, money often feels more replaceable than time because you do not have enough money. At higher incomes, the equation can reverse. You can earn another $200. You cannot earn another Saturday. That does not mean outsourcing everything. It means money starts giving you the ability to decide which inconveniences still deserve your time. That is a form of wealth people rarely photograph. The $100,000 trap. But there is a version of this story where none of that happens. Your salary reaches $100,000. Then your spending reaches $98,000. Better apartment, new car, expensive weekends, restaurants, subscriptions, financing, everything fits. Technically, until something changes. Your company restructures, your bonus disappears, your rent rises, or you simply wake up one morning and realize you hate your job. Now you look around at the life six figures bought you and discover it also built the cage. You cannot take the lower paying job you actually want. You cannot take 6 months off. You cannot start the business. You cannot move easily. You have a six-figure salary and almost no room to make a 6-month decision. This is why the first 100,000 is less important than what happens after it. The milestone does not create freedom. It creates enough resources that freedom becomes possible, and enough resources that you can accidentally destroy that possibility. Both paths begin with the same paycheck. What actually changes? Years after reaching 6 figures, you think about the person you expected to become. You thought $100,000 would make you feel rich. It did not. Not permanently. The excitement lasted. Then life absorbed the number, but the important changes were quieter. You stopped checking your balance before every ordinary purchase. A broken appliance stopped becoming a week-long emotional event. You could book a flight when someone needed you. You built savings, then investments. Your boss lost a little power over you. Your time became something you were willing to protect. You learned that earning more and keeping more are completely different skills. And perhaps most importantly, you discovered that there is no salary at which comparison voluntarily stops. You have to stop feeding it yourself. That is what actually changes after your first 100,000. Not your personality, not your worth, not whether life can still go wrong. Your margin changes. And margin changes everything. It gives mistakes somewhere to land. It gives bad jobs an exit. It gives emergencies less power. It gives opportunities room to exist. It gives you the ability to make decisions based on more than what happens before the next payday. The real milestone, your first $100,000 a year, is not financial freedom. It is not retirement money. It does not make you wealthy automatically. And depending on where and how you live, it may not even feel particularly luxurious, but it can be the first income level where the game genuinely changes, because below it, much of your extra money may be consumed simply making life stable. At 100,000, if you resist turning every raise into another monthly payment, something different becomes possible. You begin buying distance. Distance from emergencies, distance from debt, distance from bad decisions made under pressure, distance from people who can control you because you cannot afford to lose what they provide. And eventually, enough distance becomes freedom. That is the part nobody tells you when you are chasing 6 figures. You think you are chasing a bigger number. You think you are chasing a nicer apartment, a better car, a more impressive answer when someone asks what you do. But the best thing $100,000 can buy is much quieter. It is the moment a problem appears, and you realize you have options. The salary itself was never the destination. The options were, and what you do with them determines whether your first 100,000 becomes the beginning of wealth or just the beginning of a more expensive life. This is VaultLine.